Okay, good morning, everyone. This is the earliest I've ever had to be up because I'm on the West Coast. So it's 10, but it's actually 7:50 over here. Um, so like Greg said, I teach statistics at Seattle Pacific University. My interest is in statistics education. Um, and my presentation is going to roughly follow this outline. I'm also Zimbabwean, so I don't really follow an outline, but I thought I would do this for my American colleagues so you can kind of have some way of organizing um, my talk here. So I'm going to briefly talk about songs in other areas and what educational theories are consistent with using song in teaching. And I'm more interested in songs and statistics. And I have some questions about the appropriateness of using songs. I keep going back and forth between songs and music, but that's what I mean. And some thoughts of what what do we do with this information. So for a while, for a long time, songs have been used in other disciplines and in other settings. In the area of language acquisition, researchers have found that students acquire significantly greater vocabulary when stories are told in song and illustrated compared to just listening to the story. They also found that there was some improvement in listening and oral language skill development, and there's also been evidence of enhanced abstract thinking and improved attention and memory. Um, it's pretty extensive research that shows that music can facilitate other forms of learning, like remembering things. I'm sure we can all think back to learning the alphabet and singing the alphabet to remember it. Don't tell my kids, but I still go through the song when I'm trying to put things in alphabetical order. Or when you're learning the names of states or the names of presidents. So there've been the examples of songs being used to recall kind of facts. In the movie Akila and the Bee, we see the link between rhythm and language. So there's some words that I use rhythm to check my spelling. If I try to spell the word, like for instance, hippopotamus, it's probably not a word you use a lot, but that was my mascot when I was in high school. Um, I can I have to kind of do a little rhythmic thing to remember it. Oops, sorry. So while I have not come across educational theories that call for song in teaching in specific disciplines, there are educational theories with which using song in teaching is consistent. Donna referred to constructivism as a theoretical framework for the work that she did. Um, and Piaget and Vygotsky are considered among those who are forebearers of constructivism. Uh, in Piaget's theory, he talks about egocentric speech. Egocentric speech involves a child talking to him or herself for self-guidance, usually through an activity. Egocentrism can be viewed as an internal learning mechanism, and it has a much more central role to play in learning language with a variety of interactions. So you can think of song as somebody having internal speech. So, so that using song in learning is not inconsistent with this idea of egocentric language. Vygotsky viewed language as providing some way of conceptualizing and forming and organizing experiences. The use of language supposes an internalization process, and this has been termed inner speech. Such speech differs from normal or external speech because it is dialogue with oneself that assists the individual in his or her higher psychological operations. Again, you can think of singing as dialogue with oneself. At least that's one element of it. Of course, it is not always an individual process. Bloom's taxonomy focuses on both the cognitive and affective learning domains. When affective domains include emotions, the degree of acceptance or rejection. When the affective domain is attended to, in one study, this was actually a study in science, the researchers found that students responded to what they learned, they valued it and organized it, and even characterized themselves as science students or scientists. So educators could look at potential contributions of affective constructs in teaching and learning science. Perrier and I can't pronounce his name because it's got a lot of consonants and very few vowels. But this is what a quote from them, that the affective dimension is not just a simple catalyst, but a necessary condition for learning to occur. So that means for us, the implication is that it's important to address this affective domain, since emotion draws attention and channels strong residual memory. So researchers have concluded that this occurrence of private speech in the presence of others favors the construction of not only individual knowledge, but also collective knowledge. And such behavior is a healthy means to overcome obstacles and acquire new skills. So as we consider using songs in our teaching, we always have to keep in mind our goal. What is the purpose for this particular practice? Are we trying to help students memorize facts? Are we trying to have them learn some terminology? Or are we trying to help them understand concepts? So then the question becomes, well, so what evidence is there of the impact of the use of song in teaching? In a study of songs in psychology, Napolitano said that the song's lyrics illustrated certain concepts, kind of similar to what Donna was describing, that the songs had some conceptual knowledge embedded in them. The students reported that the songs were effective in aiding understanding of concepts, and also the end of term evaluation supported this. They had some measures of critical thinking and comprehension. So there was, in this instance, there was some evidence that using songs had a positive effect. The research is not quite as robust yet on, well, the quantitative research on looking at the efficacy of using song in teaching. Now, I use songs in my stats class, but I've never really studied the impact of doing it. I teach a course to undergraduates who would rather not be in that course, and we meet 3 times a week. And I started using song more for my sanity than for any sort of academic reason. On Friday afternoon, they looked like they just had enough. And I thought, well, maybe if we use song, that will, well, if we sing and we dance too, that will get students a little bit more awake. So it was mostly based on an intuitive sense that it makes class more enjoyable and reduces some of the anxiety students bring to the classroom. So there's studies now that are starting to come up that to provide empirical evidence of the impact of songs in statistics, and the preliminary findings are quite encouraging. I'm sure Larry will probably share some of the work that they're doing, and that's where quite a number of the studies are coming from. So I'm excited to see this progress and see where it goes and what evidence we gather. So some of the things that they've looked at are, or some of the findings from the studies are greater recall, there's been greater retention of knowledge, some of the affective things, reduced anxiety and a more positive attitude and greater engagement. All things that as educators would like to see in our students, because we know that they are related to achievement. But Larry will know more about that, and if you're good, maybe we'll share some of that with you. So should we use song? Well, typically songs are not an end in themselves. They are a means to an end. Music makes facts memorable. We tend to remember things that have an emotional component. And according to researchers in brain research, the amygdala, is that how you say it? And neurotransmitters work together to tag the memories as something important. I mentioned A Killer and the Bee, that the rhythmical structures allow information to be more memorable. Music can also be useful in providing the tools students need to perform a certain activity, much like letters are tools to help students learn to read and write. And music enhances affect. So if you think of lullabies, or think of love songs or religious music, that evokes some affective, some emotion in you when you hear that kind of music or those kinds of songs. It can also bind people together emotionally. So if we're talking about building a community in the classroom, I mean, that is why they had battle songs, right? Or they have war cries, or they have cheers. That is weird. We call them war cries in my school. The music has the ability to bind people together, or so birthday songs, sporting events. So songs can certainly be associated with emotional arousal, and the enjoyment can help with continued engagement. Situational interest or interest in a specific task or discussion enhances the motivation to learn. Humor and novelty are two ways to increase the situational interest. And one could argue that the use of song can infuse humor and novelty in learning. Here's the part where I'm glad this is a virtual conference. Are we really convinced that songs are as helpful in helping students understand concepts? We have some evidence that links songs to the emotional, the affective domain, and even some of the learning of facts and terminology. But are students actually understanding? If I'm looking at statistics education, do they actually understand those conceptual statistical concepts? I don't know. I mean, the evidence so far, the research evidence so far indicates an impact on affective domains. We don't have much in the area of conceptual understanding, but that doesn't mean there is no such effect, right? It just means that right now, we don't have sufficient evidence to draw that conclusion. And of course, emotions are related to learning and engagement with the subject, as others like Larry and other people have pointed out in their studies. So we know there is such a connection, but as yet, we don't have robust enough evidence to draw a firm conclusion. Okay, so where do we go from here? Well, the goals in using music in the classroom or songs in the classroom need to be clarified up front to avoid what others have called imminent critique, using the benefits claimed as the criteria for evaluating impact of music in whether it's STEM or some other area. The songs used need to be connected with the learning objectives. I think this is related to what Donna was saying about the lyric analysis. It seems that music has been easier to incorporate in the humanities than in the area of science. At least most of the research has been in the humanities. We should encourage empirical studies to evaluate the evidence of the impact of learning in the STEM disciplines. Certainly, infusing fun and relieving anxiety are worthwhile endeavors, but we want to go beyond these and see if beyond the fun, the students are actually learning what we set out to have them learn.